tragedy that has unfolded in the eastern part of our state. Let me just start off by saying the volunteer spirit is alive and well in Tennessee, and it's evidenced if you get on the ground in the counties that are affected up east. We have seen a significant outpouring of volunteerism from high-profile cases like Morgan Wallen's gift or Elon Musk's gift of Starlink satellite equipment. CEO Walmart I talked to yesterday, who's delivering hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of supplies there. Bristol Motor Speedway opening up their facility for use, and countless churches and nonprofits and neighbors and families serving those who are survivors of this tragedy. Let me say as well, there is an enormous response from the professionals. On the ground locally, I've been incredibly encouraged by the interaction of the local officials, sheriff's departments, emergency management agencies in each county, coordinating with the response that the state has had and the federal government as well. So what we've seen is a historic situation unfold in East Tennessee, and I think what we're seeing is frankly, a historic response to that. We have almost 400 National Guardsmen on the ground in the region. We have 400 TDOT workers, and those National Guardsmen, by the way, are operating airlifts with Blackhawks. A number of those Blackhawks, I think 9 in the area, that are delivering supplies and of water and other necessary supplies to residents that have been cut off in the region. They've been cut off because their roadways have been washed away, and we have 400 TDOT workers in the region who have inspected 300 bridges. We had 50 road closures. We're down to about 25, but those TDOT workers are working throughout 5 counties, 6, 7, 8 counties. Frankly, the 5 most affected we've focused on. We have 200 or so troopers in the region to support local law enforcement for everything from traffic control to just general support for sheriff's agencies in the region. There has been a significant response, and there is a tremendous amount of work to do. The damage, the loss of life, there are people still missing. There's a great deal of effort to reunify those who are unaccounted for. There has been significant loss of life already, and we don't know where that's headed. But what I will just say is we're in the middle of what is a remarkably difficult and tragic unfolding in East Tennessee. And there is a remarkable effort to meet the needs of those folks. We had a cabinet meeting this morning, all members of the cabinet and state government updating where we are and how those agencies are working together. We are opening multi-agency response centers in the hardest hit areas so that people can get their driver's license or get their food assistance or get services from human services or child services. Those are all going to be located in one place that people can go to and then be directed to find additional services as well. What we agreed upon in that cabinet call this morning is this is a survivor-centric effort that we are making. This response should be and is by all departments survivor-centric. The people in East Tennessee need response. They need cooperation. They need collaboration. They need volunteerism. They're getting that, but there is a long road ahead, and we have to continue down that road. So we wanted to give an update. I've been on the ground there twice already. Our teams have been on the ground there constantly, and there are folks in the operations center that are coordinating with local operations centers 24 hours a day around the clock. So we're hopeful. We are committed And we're very concerned about the people that are living in East Tennessee. Happy to answer questions. First, I'll let, before we open it up to questions, I want to let Patrick Sheehan, our Director of TEMA, give an update on anything I've missed, and then we'll start questions from there.
Thank you, Governor. Good morning. So we submitted an expedited major disaster request for 8 counties: Carter, Cocke, Greene, Hamblin, Hawkins, Johnson, Unicoi, and Washington. For individual and public assistance, we also included Granger County just for public assistance. That expedited request is being processed, and we're waiting to hear back from our federal partners now. We are continuing to survey damages. At the last check this morning, we had more than 600 structures, homes damaged in 4 counties. 120 of those are considered destroyed. 313 are considered as having major damage, and the rest are other categories. That number is greatly increased since yesterday. We'll have a lot more numbers, I expect, here in the next couple of days. If folks are returning to their flood damaged home, we really just want to caution them to be very careful as they remove debris. Floodwaters oftentimes carry a toxic sludge of things, and so make sure you're wearing proper gear as well. If survivors have needs with cleaning up, we've partnered to open the Crisis Cleanup Hotline. They can call to arrange for assistance so that, 1, we know where they are, and 2, we can get them the right level of assistance there. That number is 844-965-1386. For any survivor, anyone going back to their homes, just document your damages. Call your insurance companies, gather all your important documents that you can. There are more resources available on our website. We are the volunteer state, and we could see the outpouring of volunteers as the governor and many of us visited with those impacted communities yesterday. We are partnering with Bristol Motor Speedways to coordinate the opening of what we're calling the Northeast Tennessee Disaster Relief Center. We'll be posting a lot more about that here in the next few hours, but it is the place we're going to be directing donations. So voluntary organizations throughout, and communities and churches throughout Tennessee and across America are reaching out, wanting to send things. Bristol Motor Speedways has graciously allowed us to use their properties, so we'll be pushing all donations there and then using that as a logistic staging area to make sure that we're meeting the needs in each of these communities as they can receive aid. The disaster relief hotline will be opening there as well later today. We'll be publishing that number later. We're standing up that call center as we speak. We're doing the testing to make sure that the numbers are working and that we don't experience any technical difficulties. This area will also serve as a base camp for task forces and voluntary organizations that are coming in to support this. There are still lots of donation sites in each of these counties. You can find those on our webpage about what's being taken and where you can pick up bottled water or other resources that are out there. You can find all our volunteer and donations information at tn.gov/TEMA, and on the top banner is around Hurricane Helene. We're down to 1,400 power outages reported across the state right now. That's down from 5,000 yesterday afternoon, which was down from 9,000 yesterday morning. So those utility providers are making great work. There are still lots of problems with cell phone communications in Verizon, especially in Carter County, and we're working with Verizon and AT&T to provide solutions. And as the governor talked about, Elon Musk and Starlink are providing things in addition to what we've already purchased to augment that communications capability. And at this time, we're happy to take any questions you might have for us. Governor.
And you can direct questions to me or to any of the departments here.
Governor,
Yes. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Do you feel like there needs to be any sort of state investigation into the deaths at the plastics plant where people who work there said they were required to stay there until it was too late?
My understanding is that the TBI is investigating that particular situation right now.
And do you have any early indication of whether the delay caused deaths?
Don't know anything about that, but the investigation will reveal if there was any issue there. Yeah.
Some lawmakers have been arguing over whether the federal government has responded quickly enough to this in Tennessee. Could you detail the timeline of community requesting emergency status and what help we received?
Yeah, Patrick, you want to?
Yes, sir.
I know when we first requested it, but yeah, you have the timeline.
So, starting a week ago, we saw the risk for a tropical cyclone before it was named Helene. I think it was number 9. So in the state of Tennessee, we started talking to our county emergency managers, and of course, the zone of uncertainty is pretty broad. But on Wednesday, we started organizing around having briefings with our counties to make sure our emergency management partners were prepared. On Thursday, we conducted a statewide weather briefing at 3:30 or 2 o'clock. At 1500 on Thursday, the 26th, I activated the Tennessee Emergency Management Plan to a level 4, which initiates a state of emergency in the state. And we brought in and planned our EOC staffing, and the Southeast Region and East Region Regional Coordination Center staffed. On Friday, we asked for an emergency declaration, an EM, based on the conditions we were seeing on the ground. That was granted within 24 hours. We've subsequently asked for an expedited major disaster declaration, and we're waiting to hear back now from the federal government on that.
What does that mean tangibly about how quickly you receive funding?
Can you ask that again, ma'am?
What does that mean about how quickly you'll actually see funding?
So for the EM declaration, it means that Category A debris and Category B emergency protective measures is reimbursable now. We're waiting to hear on when we get the major disaster declaration, and as soon as that's issued, Tennesseans can start registering for aid, and we'll set up centers, as the governor talked about, multi-agency response centers, resource centers. We'll set those up with FEMA partners as well, so people that don't have telephone service or access to the internet can register in person and have someone help shepherd them through what they might be eligible for. Yes, ma'am.
So I've talked to the weather service on background, and it seems like that they were pretty upfront with what was going to happen. Do you think that there needs to be better communication about evacuation orders when we know that something like this is going to happen? I mean, we knew Helene was happening a week out, and it seems like people were still caught off guard. So is there a better communication method between local counties and the National Weather Service and TEMA that needs to be enacted, because they feel like people died because of this, because people weren't told to evacuate for catastrophic flood warnings that they issued?
Those catastrophic flood warnings were issued in North Carolina primarily. I would say that I was giving press briefings on Thursday talking about this, cautioning people. So you guys, some of you in East Tennessee broadcast these, asking people that lived along low-lying areas to pay attention to the forecast and take action. So I think we'll have time after the fact to look at where we could have improved communication and what kinds of things we could have done to improve warning and alerting. But I think that it's going to take time for people to research and actually figure out what we could have done better.
Yeah, let me just add, it's really hard to imagine forecasting something, a response that you can't imagine would happen. When you have floodwaters that have never occurred in a region, and no one imagined that they could have been the level they were. We had water flowing down the Nolichucky River that was 70 times its normal, maybe more than that, but what's
168 times.
168 times more water flowing down that river than it normally has. No one could imagine a water level and a flow like that for that river and the subsequent damage. So I think there'll be a lot to learn and a lot to analyze once this is over. But it was an unprecedented event that could hardly be anticipated.
Governor, you announced the emergency declaration late Friday afternoon. What was the timing of that decision to delay that long? We were seeing Unicoi County Hospital being evacuated as early as 9:30. Were you in discussions to declare emergency at that point, or what was
Yeah, we always try to watch what's unfolding. For one thing, if you don't declare at the right time, you can't declare emergencies before they've actually happened, and you have to know when. You have to have data to show that emergency has happened before you declare it. We declared it when we determined that there was a widespread disaster going on in the state. And it's important to note too, that response was quick from the federal government that allowed for that reimbursement. What's most important about this is that we can allow, it's primarily tapped and tagged to funding. And as Patrick said, those reimbursements are already available to be made. A fast turnaround, frankly.
Anybody else?
The,
We'll take two more.
Go ahead. Yep.
Still got lots of road outages and so forth. Has there been any preliminary estimate on what it's gonna cost to replace those? And where will the money come from? Is that in the state budget, or will it come from feds, or what's the mix of that?
Butch, you wanna, Commissioner Ely can talk
Yeah.
about roads.
Let me address that. I mean, I think the first thing to recognize is we're around 120 hours into this event over the last couple of days, few days, and so our folks have been very focused on really three things at this point: connectivity, and assessment, and construction. And as the governor mentioned, we had initially around 50 roads that had to be closed because of flooding, and we've been working on those. We've opened back up about half of those, so we've got 25 of those back in operation. So we're making good progress from that standpoint. We now are in that assessment phase. We have over 300. We have 300 bridges that are state bridges. We have also looked at about 10 local bridges that are connecting to our system that were important to make sure that they were able to be drived upon. And so we are now beginning to focus on the local bridges. We've got about 90 local bridges that will start tomorrow. Now moving toward to look at the situation of those bridges, and so we're now in that assessment phase. And so we're not at the point yet to be able to put a price or a number or a budget on these costs. I will say, just so people are aware, most of the interstate and state system is eligible for emergency repair funding from the federal government, and so we're taking meticulous care to make sure that we keep up with everything that needs to be done with that in order to qualify for that funding. And so we will be doing that in the coming days and weeks as we move forward. And we had our federal highway officials with us yesterday as we were in Unicoi County with us. They are aware of the situation, and they are very supportive of where we are in this process. And so we're going to continue following that process and going down that road. The last thing is construction. We had, as you know, 13 state bridges which were closed originally. Of that, one, State Route 351, we had superstructure damage as part of that will require long-term bridge repair. We had 5 bridges that were totally destroyed. Y'all have seen them. There's nothing there. And so those are going to have to start from scratch and be rebuilt. We have met over the last couple of days, and we have already initiated contracts, 4 contracts for construction on new construction to fix these bridges. We've already initiated contracts that I have signed on 4 additional contracts for debris removal which is going to be necessary for us to be able to get into these bridges and be able to start the process of construction. So we have not hesitated. We have started with action, and that action has been let's get our contractors in there to get these bridges fixed as quickly as possible and open to the public. And that connectivity phase that I mentioned at the beginning is totally geared toward getting people where they need to go. We need to get people accessible to services, whether it be healthcare, hospital, food, shelter. Those are the things that we have focused on first, and then to the assessment, and then to the construction. So that's where we are now.
Has anybody not gotten a question who wants one? Okay, we'll take one more.
Yeah, so I'm not sure who needs to answer this, but on background, we were told that undocumented migrant communities were living in East Tennessee, and that some of them have died, and there's not been a way to get in touch with next of kin. Obviously, yesterday you all said that there was a need for more Spanish translators. Can you all address that or discuss that in any way?
Yeah, so we expanded our contract for translation services. The Mexican consulates also reached out about trying to find who they think might be Mexican nationals. So we're working to try to make those reunifications now. A lot of our services that they call, the other numbers that are out there, whatever numbers we have translation services. So if they have questions, they should call. If they're looking for their missing ones, they can call that same 1-800-TBI-FIND number, and we'll make sure that translation services are available there as well. So we really, like all of you, are just trying to make sure that we find those that we can, rescue those that we can, and no matter what, bring closure to families who are suffering immeasurable heartbreak.
Thanks for your question.
Let me just make a couple comments. Patrick expresses what we all feel. And when you're there and you see these families and you see the tears and you see the heartache of what has unfolded on the ground there, you become even more committed. And a lot of questions about when, what happened. There was the question about the time that we had evacuations occurring and declarations at the same time. I got those phone calls from a sheriff saying the water's rising so fast and we can't get our people out of a hospital. Can you send helicopters? And I made calls and saw that helicopters from Virginia, from the National Guard, from the Highway Patrol were headed to that location to save those people. There has been a Herculean effort among the people on the ground there to in fact provide help for those survivors and to look for those, again, a remarkable effort to look for those who may not have survived. We all recognize what a heartbreaking experience it must be for a family to wait day after day, unable to have that resolved. There are hundreds of people, even today, right now, looking, walking, combing to find those who might be missing. It's been a very emotional week for the people in Upper East Tennessee and for those who are spending hours and nights and days, 24 hours a day, to make sure that these survivors are served. That's our commitment to the people of this state. I think what you'll see is that commitment will not stop. When there's an opportunity for improvement, we want to improve that. When we see there's a gap that's not filled in, we want to fill that in. When we see there's something on the ground happening that we're not aware of, we want to make sure that we take care of that situation. That's been what I've witnessed from the people in these communities that love their own neighbors so much, and we'll come alongside them to help them do it. Thank you for being out here today. Appreciate your participation in this.